Welcome to the Career Coffee Chat podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, removing career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Aaron Urban. I'm a certified executive coach and career accelerator. What I do is I help emerging and evolving leaders like you remove career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact and influence, and more likely income. Now, speaking of influence, particularly in the future of work, now most of you who know me and have seen the Career Coffee Chat show before, or have listened to any of the presentations that I've done, or read any of the blogs that I've produced, know that I'm a big future of work focus for what I like to talk about. And it's very interesting because right now we're such a strong socioeconomic change cycle. So there's a lot of things going on, and it's a lot to take in. Our old historical structures maybe don't support where we're going. In fact, they don't. So what needs to change? And most importantly, what does that mean for you as an emerging and evolving leader? No matter where you are in your professional career, you're probably thinking, how can I position myself wisely to thrive in the future of work? And that's exactly what we're talking about today. So come on in, pull up a chair, sit down, join our conversation, join our table, because we want to hear from you. So don't be shy. Say hi. Come on in, say hi, say where you're from, say your name, because I want to welcome you to the conversation so we can chat about the future of work, and most importantly, how to thrive in the future of work. Because the same actions, methods, means, structures that have gotten you where you are today may not give you success moving forward. So today, we're going to speak with someone very special from overseas. It's 5 something her time. So we're going to speak with this lady. And in fact, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I am not necessarily going to do this big introduction. I'm going to keep this kind of like a secret and let her introduce herself. So it's totally different because this is a 12th episode in the Forbes Coaches Council Spotlight series. So not only is she a Forbes Coaches Council coach, she is also a ICF accredited coach as well. And in fact, she's a mentor coach for some of the people who are near and dear to my heart. Now, I'm still keeping her name a secret, but I will tell you this. She is passionate about developing people for the international workplace, and most importantly, that remote workplace. And throughout her extensive career, she's worked with her clients in co-creating environments that allow individuals, teams, and businesses to thrive. Now, she's the author of the book, How to Create a Successful Remote Work Culture, and co-author of the book, Changing Conversations in a Changing World. Now, that's very interesting. Changing Conversations in a Changing World. That's a book I want to read. So without further ado, here's our super secret guest from way overseas, over the big pond. Yes. Give them your name.
Hi, Aaron. This is Ute Franzen-Waschke from Germany, a very small village. It's getting dark here already, so it's 5 o'clock, as Aaron said. And because of the time switch to normal time again, it's getting dark very early. So
now, do people overseas still laugh at America because we do this, time shift between daylight savings time? And do people over there still laugh at America?
We are doing the same thing. So we are as crazy as you are. And what is even crazier is that the European Commission, I think 2 or 3 years ago, they decided to skip it. But so far, not a single country has committed to skipping it. So we are continuing to do that shift in spring and in fall. And everyone is kind of,
like, what? I would personally, not that this show is about daylight savings time, but I'd personally like to just stay on daylight savings time. I mean, who wants to go home in the dark? Yeah. But I want to say hi to Glenn tuning in from DC, and someone is tuning in from Houston. I bet that's DB Tunsil. Because for some reason, LinkedIn's not sharing your name. I don't know what's going on there. Got the super secret hat on. Like, which I'm so glad to have you on the show. She was introduced to me with someone who's near and dear to me, a personal friend and an emerging, amazing executive coach and a very strong executive presence in the Houston oil and gas market. We'll just say Evelyn. And because you have a lot of certifications. Now, come on, give us the certifications. Give us a certification. Come on. Give us with it.
Yeah, so I love to learn. Lifelong learning is my philosophy, and So I enjoy learning myself, and I like to as well support other people in learning. So coaches, I have 2 certification programs that I support developing coaches. So it's conversational intelligence, amazing body of work of Judith E. Glaser, who unfortunately passed away far too early 3 years ago. Andy Molinsky and his REACH method is another program where we certify coaches. And yeah, mentoring coaches, helping them to develop, having good conversations with interesting people. That is where I thrive. And
that's where I thrive too. I definitely thrive with having great conversations with interesting people. So I'm really excited to have our conversation about how to thrive, speaking of in the future of work. Now, for those of you tuning in, don't be shy. Pop your questions and comments in the chat section. And if you're watching the replay later or listening to the podcast, know that we will see your questions and comments or reach out to us directly. We are here to help you. That's why Career Coffee Chat exists, is to help you thrive in the future of work in the current workplace, which is changing a lot. So for what you're seeing, what are some of the top, if you had to list top 3, we like to say top 3. What's the top 3, if you will, major shifts that we're seeing from pre-pandemic to what will help people thrive now? So what are the expectations or major shifts or what have you? What are those top 3 things? And I know you study this quite a bit.
Yeah, right. So the top 3 shifts for me, I think, is this transition that we are currently in. Last year, it was pretty clear everyone needs to work from home. Yeah, so this was clear. It was new for many, and for some, it was even never had that experience before. It was not just new; it was never had that. Never thought I would get the opportunity to work from home. And now in this year, it's kind of a transition into something we don't know yet. Is it hybrid? Is it back on site? So this is something we are still in the finding mode. And last year was about survival. And this year is more about consolidation of what is it that we learned last year? What is it that we saw we really enjoyed? Even though it was a bad time, it was a difficult time, we were struggling, we did not know about this uncertainty of the virus and how things would develop. But we also had some good takeaways from that. And so how can we use the good takeaways by looking at, do we still want to work from home? Do we like to go back to the office? Would we like to have a mix? And so this is the transition one. And I think that is the top one. As soon as we figure out what the best constellation is with that, the rest will kind of develop as well. Because as soon as we know, are we going to work on-site again, off-site, in a mix, the processes, the way we work, will be impacted.
That has to be changed, right? Yeah. Because now what's interesting is a lot of people are arguing, at least in the U.S., but we've worked from home successfully, more or less, for over a year. Why do we need to go back in the workplace? Now, a lot of people are like, yes, please send me back to the workplace. I want to see people. And that's fantastic. However, that's not necessarily everybody's jam. To be fair, last year I called it Great Reflection. This year we're seeing the Great Resignation, or Great Reset, or Great Reshuffle, or Great Redo, depending on what you want to call it in America. And I would say maybe that last top trend is the way we've done things before will not support us going forward, because there is a distinct cry for a different set of expectations culturally for companies to embrace. And if they don't,
it's not good for them. Yeah.
Not good for them, because they will struggle to get good people. Because really what they're asking for makes sense. Now, let me know what you found, because I know you're doing some research on this, which I'm super excited to learn. So what I'm hearing, this is not research, this is hearing, okay? So technically hearsay, right? So what I'm hearing is, we want more talent development. That's taken a back seat, a back burner, pushed off the radar because of economic crunches. We go up, then we go down. We go up, then we go down. So it's been pushed off the radar. People have not got access to coaching, training, certification, skill development, nothing. They wanted it. They really had to go out and find it for themselves. And this is something you should be supporting. And what I've heard is, oh, well, that's fine. You can do that, but you need to do that in your own time. We're not going to give you time to do that. No. And they're also saying, hey, leaders, we need to have more emotional intelligence. We need to have more of, better personal skills, empathy, authenticity are all big words right now that are being tossed around, among others. And for those of you tuning in, let me know what you're seeing and most importantly, what's important to you? Like, what's important to you right now? If you're thinking, okay, I've had a moment of clarity over the past year, what's coming up for you? So what are you seeing?
Many things. What you said in the beginning when you were starting off, the different needs, the resignation, talent is now anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's Europe, Asia, United States.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it gives us a little bit more. It gives us more choice, not just a little bit, but a lot more choice. So the good side for the employers, for the organizations, they can choose no matter where they are looking for the talent. They can really choose the talent no matter if they are based in their country or abroad. So that's a good thing. But of course, it also raises the level of difficulty in terms of when you're choosing the talent purely on the talent that you need for the thing that you want to do in your organization, be it coding, be it product development, whatever it is, this person might not be on site. So that might be a remote workforce. And when you lead a remote workforce, a lot of people said, well, that is something new. No, not really, because we have been working remotely and in dispersed teams also before the pandemic. But what has changed now is that people stay for good in those places, and they are not coming back because it was a business trip, because they are in a different location. They really are based somewhere else. They live maybe in a different culture. So that requires anyone who leads to have much more human interpersonal skills than maybe organizational, managerial skills. So, and I think that is transitioning to what you also wrote up, the requirements for leaders going forward. In order to be successful as a leader, I think the role will have to be repurposed, revisited, redesigned, whatever you want to. So something new is needed there as well in order to balance the differences in needs and possibilities. Also, what I heard you saying is millennials are coming into the workplace. They have different needs. At the beginning of the year, we had an age diversity workshop with a client, and we saw that you had 4, maximum 5 generations in the workplace. And, every generation comes with their value systems, with their needs, with their special desires for certain parts in their life. So, for instance, when you are young, you want to maybe travel. You don't want to sit in the same place all the time, but you need money. So you want to work. So you travel around. You are one of these digital nomads, and that's possible because technology allows it. Then might come a stage in your life where you have a family. And then you might want to separate work and private a little bit more because we saw last year how challenging it is to all work, be homeschooled.
Like Mariama has mentioned, she mentioned work-life balance is very important for her. That's a big topic. And I would come back to this because I have some thoughts. I would love to hear your insights. Where you think this is going with the work life. Is there really separation?
Yes, hold that thought. Let me just finish the stages in life, because we don't end with the family and the kids being around, because there also comes that stage in life. And I think in the United States is even more important than here in Europe. With our retirement system in Germany, people like to retire early, 60, 65, depending when you started your career. But I think in the US, people work much longer.
Because our retirement system is terrible. Just being honest, it's awful. So we have to wait. It's not that we want to. Trust me, we don't want to. Well, to be fair, most people want to have more freedom of choice. So if they are giving back and they are leveraging their intellectual capital, it's not because they have to, because they want to. That's where they want to be. But our retirement system.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say anything about the German system because I'm not as into it. I know how it works, but I don't know how future-proof it's going to be. It was definitely a good one for my parents. For those that are now retired, yes. I don't know how it is for me, for my kids. So we'll wait and see. But I think when you're getting older, then also your needs at the workplace might change. Maybe you want to take some days or some weeks off in winter, like the snowbirds do in the States, moving from the cold Michigan area where I was last year into the south of Texas, Florida. And when you have the flexibility in the workplace and you can work from anywhere, this is also possible. So I think last year we found out that we have a lot more options as employees, as individuals, as people who work in an employment situation. And with that, also a confidence has developed in the individual because they saw it was working. We could work from home. The company didn't collapse and disappear. Somebody flourished, right?
Yeah, actually. Yeah, surprisingly well. I mean, think about this. If this had happened 25 years ago,
I don't think it would have worked because we didn't have the technology to support all of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And now we do. So this is very interesting. You're right. There are multiple layers here at work. With millennials who are definitely in the leadership, emerging, evolving leaders, and sometimes higher levels of leadership as well. And then you have Gen Z who's coming in. We have the baby boomers who's exiting, and then you have us. Nobody talks about us, Gen X. I mean, we're here, but who cares, right? I mean, we're here trying to hold things together and that sort of thing. But there's different types of paradigms, different values, different expectations, and more importantly, what matters to these generations as far as how they want to be seen and heard and develop, and what their expectations of career advancement, influence, what drives influence for these individuals is slightly different. So with that layered on the stages of life, you have a very complex and dynamic work culture to manage. But we have seen a few big trends, and Mariama touched on it very well a few minutes ago. She said more work-life balance. That's been a huge topic. And what's interesting is I'm not sure we can say there's really a separation between church and state. Now that work is entering our homes, what we're finding is people who thrive in that environment are better able to create boundaries. So I know when we first started discussing what you wanted to chat about in the show, you mentioned skills that need to be developed in order to thrive in the future of work. Glenn said, Glenn's so funny. Thank you, Glenn. Whoop, whoop, Glenn, Gen X, I care. That's right. Let me hear from the Gen Xers out there. Woohoo! We're there, darn it. So Eric also mentioned, he said, I haven't heard about upper management discussing the need for new skills with leading teams remote. I have been leading remote teams, but I see that my years of experience wouldn't qualify for other opportunities. Are most industries still evaluating talent in the same way, even with this remote work disruption, i.e. higher years of presence, lower years of remote? So if I think I can encapsulate what you're asking here, Eric, is what you're seeing perhaps is the years of experience is not as valued as you would like it to be. And that is something that Gen Xers and baby boomers hold on to maybe a little bit more than the more emerging, larger demographic. What we're seeing is people can upskill. People have technology, and people know that they can spin up quite a lot faster, perhaps, than they can in the past. And that's not saying poo-poo your years of experience, not what we're trying to say. However, it's not as advantageous as we would like it to be as a check the box, I've got this years of experience, I've got these certifications, therefore I'm awesome, hire me. they're really looking for deeper qualities. So this is another transition into the skills we need to focus on for this emerging workplace that we're seeing develop, because it's not just about certifications and experience, is it?
I think it's about mindset a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I have seen last year, I have seen young people struggling with technology, especially in Germany in the educational sector, which was not prepared at all for this kind of...
Now that's a whole other conversation. Yeah.
And then I have seen experienced, seasoned leaders that used to work, I wouldn't say remotely, but they had team members abroad. So they were used to telephone conferences and everything. And they were enthusiastic and experimental in trying out new technology like Zoom, MS Teams, whatever the new tech was holding in order to get the job done. And so I think it has a lot to do with mindset. How open are we? How flexible are we? How high or how low is our resilience when things don't work in the beginning? In teams where there was a lot of trust and playful doing and acting together, it was usually easier than in those more formal, traditional settings where people were looking for, we have a task to do, we have boxes to check, and they got nervous when they didn't get the things done in the time frame, and that caused a lot of stress, cortisol, and we know what happens when we go up.
We don't do a good job.
No,
we don't make decisions well either, and we also don't articulate very well either. So
and so I think it's experience and I think when you have experience in the same company, you also have a good network in the company, you have a good standing in the company, and that makes it maybe a little easier than when you are new. Also last year, a lot of new hires or people who started a new job had issues getting the way in because there was no onboarding procedure for them to introduce them to team members, to introduce them to technology and processes.
So I think start a job and working remotely because there wasn't any, I guess, roadmap.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
We hadn't done enough.
And I think that is something that in this year it became visible last year, so people became aware of it. And this year, it's kind of the chance to look at everything that bubbled up, that popped up last year, and now we start working on how can we resolve it, how can we become better at it, because this mix of working from home, working in the company, remote work, it will not disappear. And what you said, and what one of our guests said about work-life balance and the skills we need to maybe develop to set better boundaries. I think I mentioned in our conversation that we had the wonderful research Nancy P. Rothbard did around segmentors and integrators, where some have an easier way of setting the boundaries and others just merge and mix. And last year was such a year where all of a sudden the workplace moved in at home. Yeah. Right. And for people who like to have a segmentation, a pretty strict boundary around the work package and a pretty strict boundary around the private life, they had an intrusion. They saw intrusion happening. Life at home was all of a sudden
became work.
Yeah.
And without those people who knew how to set positive and self-supporting boundaries, it just became, and also there was a great deal of fear factor as well, to be fair, last year. A great deal of fear. I have a job, therefore I need to work all these ridiculous hours to keep it, which may or may not have been true, but that's what our emotions were telling us, right?
Yeah. And also this urge to compensate maybe for not having used the technology so efficiently because it was new. We all know when we try new things, it takes us a little bit longer. And definitely working from home was trying a new thing, a big new thing.
Right.
And And so there were certain preferences that Nancy found in her research long before COVID came. But in the COVID time, we saw that well-being and engagement was really affected by working from home. And how was that? Why was that? Part of it was definitely because of this integration segmentation issue. For integrators, it was probably less of a problem because they are integrating anyhow. They already integrated when they were working in the office. But for segmentors, it was harder. It was harder. And I think talking about skills that are needed for the future, this is definitely a skill to develop, creating awareness. What am I? Am I a person who likes to separate work and private life, or the boundaries fluid? And by creating an awareness around that, I can learn what is it that I need? Where do I need to set boundaries for myself in order to keep a healthy work-life balance? And in the same way as individuals try to do that, it's something that leaders should know about, that there are these two types of people in the workplace.
Right. And also, leading to that too, and setting the right example, to go back to the years of experience versus, basically what our industry is evaluating in talent. And what we're seeing in America, I'd love to know what's happening overseas too. What we're seeing, a very strong trend in America, is it's not just about your technical capabilities. That is a component, but what makes or breaks candidacy really is who are you, the individual. What are you bringing to the table? How likable are you? Do they want to work with you? How good of a collaborator are you? Do you have a higher EQ or EI, emotional intelligence? What's your interpersonal skills? How are you as far as inspirational, motivational, particularly in the leadership? Are you comfortable with sharing, appropriate personal stories? Just being a human being. Are you good at that? Because historically in America, we have had this illusion that you have to be this top-down driven leader and show up and be very professional and never have a personal life, and pretty much they didn't. And and it was just very command and control, and that does not work anymore.
No. I mean, here in Europe, in Germany, a lot of companies, tech companies that I'm working with, they long before COVID tried to adapt agile working method, reducing hierarchies, being more like a network and sharing and knowledge sharing. Yeah, on the paper, yes, but in real life, it's not so easy, because a big organization that has worked for decades top down has certain mechanisms, certain structures in place that you cannot break up from even in another decade, because you have set a leadership style, a leadership culture in that organization, and making a culture shift takes time, takes effort, and takes the right mindset. Yeah? And sometimes it might even take a generation to finally complete the culture shift. Yeah. And so I think last year gave us a boost in digital literacy, and I think it also gave us a boost in questioning or reflecting on the structures that we have in place in the workplace. Are they still serving us?
Right.
And in what way do they need to change? And in what way do they need to change faster? And coming back again to the skills that your audience is so interested in, is the skills that you mentioned about emotional intelligence. And I think self-awareness is something that people need to bring to the workplace, no matter how young or experienced senior they are. If there is a lack of self-awareness, what is it that they need? What is it that they prefer? If they don't know that about themselves, it's very hard to integrate into a team. Yeah. And so as a leader, getting a feeling and being able to detect when a new member comes in, when they hire new people, to really see how that individual fits into the existing team, and why is it that individual is joining the team? What is it that this individual will be contributing to the rest, so that the team will be more complete? Yeah, and with more complete, I mean maybe representing also a larger variety and diversity of skills and possibilities. Yeah. And so I truly believe that the leaders of the future, they must somehow turn around what you said, command and control, managing and organizing people, more towards turning that side of them to the forefront that is more about people, interpersonal relationships, conversations. I mean, Judith E. Glaser said, everything happens through conversations. And the leader who is able to have conversations with their team members, I think that's all you need in order to be successful as a team leader or as a leader in general. But it's not so easy as it may sound.
Well, good news is all of this can be developed. So
Yes.
even if you are self-aware and you do recognize, oh yeah, I'm not so comfortable with certain spaces, these are all skills that can be developed. And it doesn't mean you have to be amazing at everything. In fact, as leaders, I encourage you not to try to be amazing at everything. I encourage you to focus on the gifts and strengths that you have, and then of course mitigate, any of those gaps. But we're not going to be amazing at everything, nor should we. But this self-awareness portion does lead to better authenticity and being a real human being. And what I'm also seeing is a strong call for leaders to become almost more coach-like. So developing that coaching mentality to help your team thrive, because that's very important. Now, for those people who are individual contributors, what is the workplace looking for that might be a little bit different pre-pandemic? So what I'm seeing right now, again, same trend, more emphasis on the person, not just the skills. So it's a two-part process. You're the skills, the expertise, the technical abilities, and then who is the person? So that completes the whole picture. So they're really looking for the whole person candidate and not just a person who shows up, skills, expertise, when this is me, professional. Yes, that's important. And who are you? I'll give you an example and let me know what you're seeing too. Coaching a young lady. Actually, she's mid-senior career, to be honest. So she's mid-senior career. Her comfortability has been very command and control, strong work-life boundaries, very professional, does not share personal. It's all about, here's my technical skills and abilities, nothing about her, who she is. Zero. So coaching her and helping her understand how to appropriately share something about herself and feel comfortable with that, because that's not a comfort zone a lot of people have. Right?
It comes back again to the strict division, work and private. So probably that lady is someone who is a segmentor, so trying to keep both parts clearly separated. And what am I seeing? I think here in Germany, it has always been business is business and private is private. And with that being said, the boundaries have started already to blur long before the pandemic. I think it started to change actually around the time when globalization began. Because then all of a sudden we were learning about different cultures, what they needed. And there were some cultures that really needed the relationship before the task. And so that was something where we practiced what is it that is okay to be shared, in a business context, what are not so good topics to talk about, like the small talk things US people are very good at, and Germans are, a little, what can we talk about? And so they got a list of topics. And I think that is what I was reflecting on when I was listening to you talking about that client. So for me, the question would be, what is it that people are missing out on when they are not sharing in an authentic manner what is also part of their professional personality, which might be a little bit more about themselves, because you don't leave the person at home when you go to work.
No. That's been very interesting, and I've noticed that, historically, we really thought, oh, I just shut the door of my personal life. No, you're dragging all that baggage with you.
Yeah. And last year, I mean, the household problems were right on camera in the business meetings.
Right here.
Yeah. Kids and interruptions,
Dogs.
the phone, the mailman, whatever. I mean, we were part of that private life all of a sudden. And I think that experience helped.
It did.
Or it helps for the future to loosening up some of these boundaries, and yet making sure, and then again reflecting, how healthy is it for me to open up, and where do I need to keep my boundaries? Mm-hmm. Because last year also the well-being, like we said, has suffered. And why is that? Because there were no boundaries, not enough boundaries.
Right.
Yeah.
There was no structure. There was no historical structure to lean into. Mm-hmm. I mean, in the workplace, when we go to work, we drive through the community, we know what to expect. We know, okay, I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to slog through traffic, and then I'm going to get into, and I'll play a great podcast like Career Coffee Chat Show, for example, available on all major channels. So I can come into work feeling motivated and upbeat because I had to slog through traffic. And then I get into work and I know I have my work routine. Yes. And then I can shut it down and go home. Mm-hmm. It comes into your life. Mm-hmm. Don't have that structure to lean into. Yeah. So those people who are able to create those structures for themselves, and again, have that self-awareness, these are people who will thrive in the future of work. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about, okay, is it hybrid? Is it remote work? Is it both? You're saying both. I say probably yes. And know that a lot of companies are still holding on to this. Oh, we're done? Okay, great. Let's all come back to the office. No, you're seeing big attrition. Why? Well, because people got in America. Okay, in America, we have this very strong individualist culture. Very strong. For the first time ever, people, one, have had a chance to breathe and pause. Some for good reasons, some not. We've had a chance to reflect. And we've had a chance to reflect on what we want and what we don't want, what gives us energy, what drains our energy, how we thrive, what was really meaningful for us. We're seeing a lot of career pivots, a lot of shifts in what they want as far as company culture, and they've seen a personal sniff of freedom. And now companies are like, oh, well, that dream's over now, so you can come back to the office. And they're like, I don't think so. So for people that's meaningful to them, maybe the first time ever they've been able to have dinner with their kids at a regular time, or whatever that looks like, right? Mm-hmm. They're not going to give that up.
No, and they don't have to give it up because it's now available, and we saw that last year. So it's more complex. It's not that easy that a company can command people back or send people home. It's they lost a little bit of that power. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that is also a learning process to realize now that we don't have that power anymore, but we still appreciate the people, the skills they have, the work they do. Mm-hmm. So how can we make sure they are not walking away? Yeah, and I think that's what you said. There's a lot that's happening in the States. Resignation, people are resigning, people are finding
massive numbers.
Yeah. And so for companies to reflect on what is it that is important for the role, for the job this person is doing. Is it really, really essential that this person is on site, or can it be really done from anywhere? I mean, there are some jobs where I say, it's difficult. It's not impossible, but it's harder to do it fully remote.
Right. If you're going to be a maintenance technician, for example, you can't do that remotely. That's an in-person role. However, if you're an accountant, I don't think you need to come into the office. I mean, you probably do that from just about anywhere.
Yeah. And I think this is a good example. We need to be really cautious not to create more categories, let's say, among employees, right? So really looking at what is the job, where can it be done, and then decide based around these needs, also from a company's perspective. I mean, a company is also a place where people make money, but they also need to have an income in order to pay money out to people. So it's a business concept. So companies need to make sure that they look at the roles that they have. Where can these roles be done? On-site, off-site, a mix. And then I'm asking myself, how much do I need to control? If I say it's a role that can be done either or, how much do I need to control an individual in their decision of working 1 day from the office, 3 days from the office? Where is that benefit? So for me, I always say smart future work. Future work must be smart. And what does it mean to be smart? It must be sensible. So the S is for sensible.
Okay.
How much sense is it for this team, for this group of people to be in the office? How often? Yeah. So how much do we need to work together? Because also people like to work together, being creative together, brainstorming together. That for sure works better for most of the people when they are in the same room. It doesn't have to be, but they decide on their own what is best for them. So it must make sense. It must make sense for them as an individual, but also as a team, and for the company, for the products and for the customers they have. Then it must be motivating. So whatever work concept, whatever structure I'm setting up as a company for my employees, or better with my employees, it must be motivating for them and for me as the owner of the company. Because without motivation, we have that drop with engagement, as we saw it last year when things were really going down. And it must be agreed. That means we need to talk to each other. What is it that we want? What is it that we need? And we need to agree on something.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's rocket science, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. We have to agree on something? What?
Then we have the R. The R is for realistic or resource oriented. So looking really at what can I do? What is possible and what is not possible, and be real about it. And last but not least, the T is for me time limited. So future work is time limited. I'm not deciding today as a company for the rest of the 5 or 10 years down the road. No, I'm deciding today what works best for us in the context that we are now in. And we might have to revisit that more often, this VUCA kind of a thing, agile approach. And so for me, these are the specifics of what makes future work work. It must be smart.
All right. Gerald just shared, he said, what I wonder about is the supply and demand curve. So if many quit looking for remote work, for example, there have to be an open to remote company to absorb those workers. What do you think the ratios are at this time? So between, remote, hybrid, must be in person. It's a moving target, honestly, Gerald, because right now what we have is some companies who are having a rude awakening. They're experiencing a lot of attrition and they want to be in person. They don't have to be. And then there are those companies who are like, oh, let's do all remote. And they're finding that, there's some things that really do benefit to be in person. Team collaborations, for example. We've got a thumbs up for needing to talk to one another. Yes. So with that being said, it's a moving target right now. We're in brand new territory. And for those who are considering a career advancement, for example, and how, the future of work and the evolving world of work, what matters right now? Well, I think we touched a few of them. So I'd like to just summarize, and I'd love to hear from you, what you think about, adding to that, making sure we can encapsulate this. So when it comes to career advancement, successful strategies, moving for a very, very strong change cycle, and knowing that is an evolving time, right? We don't have all the answers, and there are some things we do see. So what are those things that are important if you're seeking career advancement, if you're wanting to lead great teams, etc.? Well, one is being able to be fluid. So we use the term agile. I like to use the word fluid because that is responding in a positive way to the changes in your environment or the demands and needs of your teams in your company. So being able to be fluid and responsive, that's very important. Being more comfortable with being personable, that is also more important. And also as a leader, understanding that you need to show up to your teams a little bit differently than you have in the past, reaching out to them with more empathy and seeing them as whole people. As an individual contributor, also showing up as a whole person. And one of the trends I'm seeing right now, let's just say if you're in the interviewing stage, for example, the hiring managers are less forgiving for you not being conversant with a digital space. So that is an expectation. The bar is much higher. Earlier in 2020, we were all like, oh, sure, dogs, cats, yelling things, trains, whatever, down at people like this, or you're way down here at the bottom of the screen. We're okay with that. You're like hiding halfway off the screen talking like this. We're all right with that, right? Because we know you're just working through it. It's new. We're all figuring this out. Now, no. You need to show up 100% and most importantly, be comfortable with projecting the persona you want to be perceived at. Impressions are huge. And the challenge is we don't have all the data points we would as an in-person interview. And almost all interviews are remote. So then remote workplace. You're working in a remote workplace. Is that going to be treated different than, hybrid or someone in person? Maybe. So what do we do? And what I'm seeing is discussions right now about compensation and compensating these particular segments differently. And that is not something I wanted to see. What are you seeing?
Yeah, that was something I found quite shocking last year when, I think it was mid last year, when some tech companies were trying to get people back. And the threat was, if you don't come back, there's this pay cut, and depending on where your home office is, if it's not in the expensive San Francisco area,
your location, so where are you located? Will pay.
Yeah.
If you're located in Wisconsin versus New York, obviously you have to be paid as well. Yeah.
So that is not a development we would like to see.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, even here in Europe, it's kind of more dangerous, let's say, because in the European community, people can work or could also move between countries without having a work permit. So that was a good thing. But the pay difference is quite a thing. Yeah. So there might be high cost countries, low cost countries, best cost countries, whatever cost countries you want to give as an attribute.
Right.
And so for companies that used to work across European borders, it was easy to relocate workforces or put work in places where it was cheaper. And now it's even easier for that, because you don't have to move anything. You don't have to, unless you want to produce, of course. You just hire people in those places. Yeah. And then you're saving on the payroll. Yeah.
Yeah, it's dangerous because we're seeing a lot. I mean, and this was, to be fair, pre-pandemic, this moving workforce, importing workforce from, say, the Philippines or lower cost countries to do certain types of work. And it hurt people because they lost jobs. Even though the stick was, or the propaganda was, okay, no, we're just going to repurpose and you'll keep your job. That wasn't always the case. So now we can lean on other countries, which is good for the companies, but not maybe so good for the residents. I know Mariama just mentioned, she goes, leading back to our earlier conversation, and psychological safety, she said, helps a lot with being able to show up 100%. I agree with that, because if you're in a culture that's like, you should never have a personality, would consider a different job. But yeah, so having that's important. Sorry, I interrupted. Please continue.
No, all good. So absolutely, psychological safety is important, because then you feel you can show up the way you are. You are automatically more authentic. When you are more authentic, it's more trust in the room. It's the chemistry is just right in the room. But coming back to that payment thing, I have no solution for that, because it used to be there in the past, but I think now it's even easier for companies to save on that end. But also looking from the side of the worker, I mean, being hired as someone who is considered as a cheap worker, who is as qualified as someone, in a high-cost country, I think there is some inequality, and this does not feel right. So for me, one aspect of the work of future is also the aspect of decency. So future work must be decent in a sense that people get paid in a good manner for the job they perform, for the skills that they bring, and not as much where they are based. Of course, yeah.
I think
if you live in expensive.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see the leveling, globalization of the pay scales. Yeah, we're starting to see that that discussion starting here in the U.S. Okay, are we then, creating pay bands no matter where you are? So if you're in California, which is a very high cost area, you will only be paid X, and it doesn't matter where you live. Or are we going to pay via geographic location? So that's something I think we're seeing right now. So in the future of work, just keeping that in mind and having that conversation if you do decide to change the company you're working for. Because now what's on the negotiation table is much, much different than what historically was on the negotiation table. Now we can negotiate things like how we're going to show up at work as a remote, hybrid, in person. We can negotiate hours. In some cases, not always. So things like that. It's important to keep this in mind, and also paying close attention to how they plan on compensating you. Very close attention. Yeah. So for the future of work, I mean, it's again it's a moving target. So we don't have all the answers. And knowing and being cognizant of trends that we're seeing right now is very, very important. So some of the trends I'm seeing that I haven't really discussed a whole lot about is right now, there's a couple things going on. In the US, we have something called applicant tracking systems that not everybody's competent, cognizant of, or how to position themselves with those, and which is weeding out a whole lot of very qualified candidates. So when I hear leaders say, we can't get qualified people, I say that's BS. That's not true, because you do have them. They can't get through your system. So we're seeing a wall there created by technology. I'm also seeing, years of experience, as mentioned earlier, not being necessarily held as important as they used to be in the US anyway.
The question would be, why is that? Is that because more experienced people are more expensive? Yeah, so it comes down to money again.
It does. It comes down to money again. And that's unfortunate. So it's a very interesting world of work that's changing right now, and how can we thrive? So what are some top tactics we want to leave people with to help them thrive?
Yeah, the top tactics are creating these boundaries, becoming aware of the boundaries that each and every individual needs in order to be well, feel well, and stay well. So boundaries is one thing. The other thing is maybe also what we touched on, like the technology. No matter from where you are, from the office, from home, a certain professionalism around the use of technology, efficiency, also effectiveness, choosing the right tool for the task at hand. So I think this is also something that individuals have a little bit more control of than in the past with the tools that are out there. And for the leaders, maybe reflect on on that other side of you, that not that business driver only, but also the people whisperer side of leadership.
Right, right. Absolutely. As I share with my very technically focused professionals who want to move into leadership, I was like, okay, are you comfortable with being able to let go of being the technical expert? Because leadership is not necessarily about being the expert. It's about being able to lead people, people power. So, well, it's been a deep pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing this space with us, sharing this time with us, and thank all of you for tuning in now and the replay later. If you do have questions, if you're watching the replay later or listening to the podcast, feel free to reach out to us. We're just a click away. You can find this lovely, more information and her best-selling book right here at discover-your-choices.de. So you can discover more about that and the very interesting book on conversations. I want to read that book. So is it available on Amazon by chance?
Yes, they are all. Both books are available on Amazon, local dealers. So Amazon is quick. And just like
right. And we do like convenience, don't we? All right. Well, thank you again for joining me, joining us, sharing this conversation, sharing this time, sharing your expertise. It's a very interesting time to be in, and yes, we can thrive. And most importantly, until next time, my friends, remember, keep elevating.
Thank you for tuning in on the Career Coffee Chat podcast. It's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is coacheurban@gmail.com or tweet at coacheurban, Instagram, coach.eurban, or reach out to my Facebook group, Elevate Your Career. So I'd love to learn more about you, hear your insights, and what questions you have. You can find out more about me at coacheurban.com. And don't forget, please do reach out on LinkedIn. You can find me at Erin Urban. Until next time, cheers. Here's to caffeinating your career.